The whisper campaign that Republicans are running to smear journalist Jamal Khashoggi tells you everything you need to know about where the parties stand right now in 2018. Dyze in your house. Exclusively on East Coast Radio.
If you don't know what Staten Island is, it's like New York's abortion that lived.
Representing Staten Island.
These Staten Island boys are no joke. Nobody likes me. Nobody likes me. But that's okay, cause I don't like y'all anyway. And I don't like y'all anyway.
We got one goal for the next 2 months. One goal for 2018. And that's to take back the House. And we're only going to do that by going out and voting.
Representing Staten Island.
I mean, I know the civil rights movement didn't exactly end racism, but I thought we were further along from this.
Representing Staten Island.
It's a known fact that the reason I don't have any friends is solely because I'm a liberal who cares about other people and doesn't want to see brown people and women suffer at the hands of old, rich, white men who have been in power for way too long.
Representing Staten Island.
Nazis? Bad. Free press? Good. The most dangerous thing you can do is sit back and think that America has no chance of ever turning into an autocracy or some sort of authoritarian regime when you have a fascist regime on the rise right now, unchecked by Congress, which makes November the most important election of our lives.
Representing Staten Island.
J Porks, East Coast Radio, Dyze in your house, J Porks Podcast. We must resist or we won't exist. Taking it back in November. East Coast Radio for the least heard voices. Hey yo, who's in the house? Dyze in your house. What is the word, peeps? What goes on? It is Friday, and we are back with another action-packed edition of Dyze in Your House here on East Coast Radio. It's East Coast Radio for the least heard voices. This is the home every Friday for a brand new episode of Dyze in Your House, which serves as the pre-show and the post-show and the prelude to the main event. And the main event is the J Parks Podcast, and that comes to you every Sunday evening. We are tackling the constant, humongous weeks in the news cycle. We are currently and continuously covering what we hope is not the fall of democracy, what we hope is not the end of all of our institutions that have lasted since the founding of this country, since George Washington. There have been 44 people before Trump, and they all didn't destroy the country. Something tells me that it's him, and not a deep state, and not liberal media. I don't think it's any of that. I think it's him. I think it's hatefulness. And I think we have to talk about what's going on in about 18 days. November 6th, we have the biggest election of our lives. And yeah, the biggest election of our lives was 2016, but a lot of you decided to not vote or protest or vote Gary Johnson or Jill Stein. And really what you did is voted for Vladimir Putin. So we're gonna do a little, not a full do-over. Excuse me. We're not gonna do a full do-over, but we're gonna have somewhat of a do-over. We are going to have an opportunity to replace every single representative in the House of Representatives. They are all up for election. And you should, well, what you could do is you could research candidates, decide who's best for you, or you can just say, you know what, I've been watching Republicans drive a stake through the heart of democracy, to drive a stake through justice for the last 18 months, 2 years, and you know what, maybe it'd be best if we had a different party in the House of Representatives, and that party would be Democrats. Now, you know what, I get frustrated a lot. And I get frustrated a lot from watching cable news. Because I'm a psychopath. We never embarked on this journey of the J Porks podcast and Dyze in Your House. It was never a journey that started with, hey, by the way, I'm a normal guy. That was never a thing. I've always been some oddball character. So, watching cable news, keeping up on things, has been what I've been doing. And I'm not the kind of guy. Well, no, it's not a pat myself on the back. It's every week I record this podcast, 2 podcasts a week, and every time I put it out, a couple of hours later, the podcast is like been usurped by a vicious news cycle. You know? There's always a hurricane, something. There's always some other scandal that this wannabe despot orange cunt monkey always gets himself into that usurps the news we were talking about on the J Parks podcast. Even if I record something at 7 in the morning and I put it out at 9 in the morning that same day. But I don't want to pat myself on the back for this. Jamal Khashoggi is dead. That's not cool. That's not something we should all accept. So let's just full stop right there. That's not something we should accept. But for the first time in my life, I recorded 2 podcasts that actually mattered. That news stayed in the cycle until now. It's still there. Jamal Khashoggi, we talked about him on Friday, on the last episode of Dyze in Your House. And we spoke about basically all of the information that's had now. And a week later, it's still going on. So, today I want to talk about, and then on the J Porks podcast, we got into voter suppression. Something that didn't stop this week. It's continuing in North Dakota, in Georgia, in parts of Michigan. Look out for that. Pay attention to that. And make noise about it. Because the only way we get things changed is to make noise. So every morning I turn on a little cable news action. And I watch Morning Joe. I don't want to watch Morning Joe. It's the least conservative of the news shows. I'm not watching CBS or ABC. That's too feels like, you know when you have that cool aunt who wants to talk to you in the kitchen about something that you can't talk to your parents about, but they're younger and they're cool. That's how I think of those. That's how I think of even though Oprah's friend isn't young, I think of her as she's that aunt who wants you to give up the goods. She's that aunt that wants you to tell her what's going on, even though you're not telling adults what's going on. CBS, I kind of feel the same. CBS, ABC, NBC, I'm watching MSNBC already. Fox and Friends, obviously, I'm not gonna watch Fox and Friends unless I want to self-inflict an embolism on my brain and have my brain literally explode. And honestly, CNN is still not forgived for running Trump rallies live. Because they were supposed to be the Clinton News Network. The Clinton News Network didn't do a good enough job getting Hillary Clinton elected because look where we are. What just happened? So CNN, you owe us. Clinton News Network, she fucking loses. But the things I spoke about, voter suppression, Jamal Khashoggi, these things are still happening. Do you know that 93 million people didn't vote in the presidential election? Do you know that over 100,000 people are not going to vote in the midterms? That's 100,000 people. I'm sorry. I said the numbers wrong. Do you know that 93 million people didn't vote in the presidential general election? And do you know that over 100 million people will not vote in the midterms? Now, you might think, well, Jay, listen, we don't want people uninformed. Just go in. You don't need to be informed. You look for the person with the D next to their name, and you bubble that bubble in. We can talk about policies and stuff next year. Right now, we need to put a check on a dangerous executive of the Oval Office. And so I watch these morning shows. I watch Morning Joe. And mostly, it's a good place for if you're watching that and then you tweet with the hashtag Morning Joe. Like, you will find a lot of liberals complaining. Like me. So that's how I make friends. So now I watch Morning Joe, I get aggravated about something, I tweet what I'm aggravated about, hashtag Morning Joe, and I get a bunch of people liking the tweet. And that's how we make friends. So every day I hear about the Democrats' message. The Democrats don't have a message. And I'm not gonna, this is gonna be the podcast for, who does Jay think I should vote for? Listen to this one, and you'll find out. I'm not going to do it 2 days before the election. That makes no sense. Let's talk about messages. Now, do the Democrats have a message on a hat? No. Have the Democrats hired Donnie Deutsch for branding, marketing assistance? No. Here's what you need to know about the Democrats' message. The Democrats don't have a leader that thinks it's okay for the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia to have his henchmen interrogate, dismember, and murder a member of the free press based on, maybe he wrote some negative stories about you. Or his last story was why Arabs need a free press. That man is dead. The White House is covering this up. The White House is like, we're going to let Saudi Arabia investigate for a little bit. Rogue killers. Rogue killers. Now listen, Jamal Khashoggi was a great person. He's a journalist. Some journalism is the Lord's work, it's a tough gig. It's a tough business, especially now. But I don't think that Jamal Khashoggi was Jason Bourne. I don't think he's Jack Reacher. So I don't think that there's some rogue hit squad coming to get him. I think that's complete and utterly ridiculous. But then again, look who said it. Look who's saying that it's rogue killers. A wannabe despot orange cunt monkey. He says that it's the same as Kavanaugh. They're treating the Crown Prince just like they treated Kavanaugh. Guilty before innocent. That's not a comparison that is actually apt in this sense. Also, Kavanaugh was never proven innocent. The FBI chose to not do a full investigation. They chose to not talk to key witnesses. That's what happened. So don't tell me that Brett Kavanaugh was absolved of all his sins. And you know what? If you're like Brett Kavanaugh, teaches, goes to church every Sunday. If you believe in God, you believe in the Lord, then you know that when this life is over, when your lifetime on the Supreme Court is over and you die, you are going to burn. You are going to burn. So, Republicans are a part, and I don't care, Bob Corker, I don't care what a handful of Senate Republicans are saying about this, because Republicans stand by Trump. You can't just not stand by him. You can't just say things and then say, oh, well, I'm standing up to him. No, you weren't. Like, Jeff Flake tweeted something earlier, might have been yesterday, about, oh, you know, Trump, what he said about Saudi Arabia, whatever. Something about the journalist getting killed, not cool. Flake, you put somebody who sexually assaulted women on the Supreme Court. Go away. Your moral standards are gone. And don't, and delete your account. Retire. Go off into the sunset. Cash in on your tax cut. And go on some missionary in Africa, wherever he was last time. Uganda, whatever it is. So the Republicans are the party that thinks it's okay, that thinks that a member of the free press who is living in America, working for the Washington Post, they think that him getting killed, not that big of a deal. Not an international incident, because we're selling $110 billion in arms to them. Okay, I mean, you say that, and people hear that, and they're like, oh, wow, that's a big arms deal. That's not the arms deal. It's like $10 billion from Trump. The rest of it negotiated by Obama. Sorry. This guy really does have some... This guy is just so envious of, like, black people. You know? Like, everything, I gotta undo everything Obama did. Obama did it, I'm not doing it. So Republicans, you know, if you want them to control... If you want Trump to not be investigated, if you don't think that his shady business ties and him bankrupting casinos, if you don't think that's a big deal, but also you still voted for him based on, well, I want him to run the country like he runs his business. He's a businessman. Hey, he's not really a businessman. He puts his name on things. Do you remember Atlantic City? I do. It was fun. And it's gone. It's not gone, but it's disheveled and destroyed. I've had less cigarettes grubbed off me in Hunts Point in the Bronx than I had in Atlantic City. It's utterly disgusting. So first and foremost, your Republican Party, ladies and gentlemen, are the Republican Party that thinks it's okay that Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, goes over to Saudi Arabia to investigate the murder of a journalist and is seen in a photo op smiling and cackling. You joking? Then comes back, we're gonna let them investigate. The consulate got a new paint job, you say. Interesting. Smells like a cover-up. But if you, let's just say you don't care, let's just say you're not somebody who's interested in journalists that get murdered in Saudi Arabia. Maybe you're not that caring of a person. Fine. Let's hit the dinner table. How about your healthcare? How's it feel? Do you like healthcare? When you go to the doctor, how much does that cost you? Does that cost you a lot, a little, or nothing at all? I know it doesn't cost you nothing at all, because we live in America, the only one of the, you know, major nations that doesn't have some sort of healthcare for everybody. Can't cry socialism. It's not socialism. Socialism is an entire form of government, not just how you issue healthcare. Okay? And I'm sorry, but if you want to cry socialism, I'm just going to point to all those taxes that pay for the police, all those taxes that pay for firemen, all those taxes that pay for Social Security. I'm gonna point to Medicare. I'm gonna point to all that stuff, and I'm gonna say, if you're not a fan of socialism, then why do you want your grandma to die? Because your grandma doesn't have health insurance, she's going to die. Why do you want that? So Democrats are a party that, listen, they may not agree on what, if they want, you know, some members of the Democratic Party want to do single payer, want to do universal. Some members of the Democratic Party want to do Medicare for all. The point is that in either of those plans, it ends up where you get health care for free. And that's what Democrats want. Democrats want all Americans to be able to go to the doctor without worrying about, oh crap, I'm going to miss, you know, it's going to cost me this much money and I can't afford to take off work. Like, do you know how many times, and I know people don't want to hear this, but like as a waiter, do you know how many times I had to go to work sick? I had to go to work on a bum knee with my sciatica, you know, and my back acting up. You know, I had to go into work in all sorts of pain. Shoulder gone, not able to feel my hand. I've had so many instances where I've had to go to work because I couldn't afford to take off work and because I didn't have health insurance. I haven't had health insurance since I was 17 years old. 17. I'm an American. I'm an American citizen who works on the books. I didn't used to work on the books, but last 3 years I've worked on the books. No, I was on the books at most of my restaurants. I've worked on the books like 8 out of the last 10 years. And I don't have health insurance. And I understand that I'm healthy, but if you think that's normal, then we shouldn't even be having this discussion. Then how do you think healthcare should be done? Because the Democrats might not have the actual answer, but you know what? Republicans don't have shit either. Remember they tried to take it away from you? They took out the mandatory minimum. The mandatory minimum. What's it called? Oh, damn it. They took out the law that you had to have healthcare. The word is slip. I know the word. It's just slipping me. I'm not stupid. I am stupid, but not here. I'm just... They want to take away coverage for pre-existing conditions. Now, this is on healthcare. The Affordable Care Act that President Barack Obama put in place, that, listen, wasn't perfect, but it gave a vast majority of Americans the ability to easily get on healthcare. And that's how people stay healthy in a country, is they get to go to the doctor. So think about that. I haven't been to the doctor in over 15 years. Now, I don't, you know, have any obvious tumors or anything, but I smoke cigarettes. I mean, I don't eat salad. And I don't mean at all. I don't mean like occasionally. I mean, I've never eaten a piece of lettuce on purpose. It's just how I roll. A little personal insight to me. So, don't you think that someone like me should go to the doctor? And listen, I understand that young people would probably be taxed a little more than old people. I get it. Take it out of my paycheck. Take it out of my unemployment check. I don't care what you do. This whole thing that, you know, to raise taxes to increase the quality, to make your quality of life better, is still a bad thing, is just insane to me. Like every commercial, like I've seen political commercials recently, and it was, Pelosi, open borders. Nancy Pelosi wants open borders. Tax hikes. Well, first, nobody. I don't know, there might be one person, there might be two people, but out of the, 300 or whatever in the House, or 400 or whatever, however many it is, and the 100 people in the Senate, There's literally not one person in government that thinks that the borders should be open, like completely, like with just people walking in and out. Nobody thinks that. And this idea that raising taxes to improve your quality of life is a bad thing is just driving me crazy. So, Democrats want answers for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Democrats want you to have health care. Democrats also want... Here's another thing Democrats want. Democrats want a living wage. They want $15 federal minimum wage. Now, I live in New York, so let me tell you that that's a thing that's going to happen in December. We have it. Cool. We also have a, way more expensive cost of living here in New York. But, so for instance, $15 in New York. That's cool. New York politicians did the right thing. Cuomo, de Blas, nice work. I applaud you. But here's the problem. My girlfriend lives in South Jersey. I don't know what the minimum wage is in South Jersey, but it ain't $15. So, now in New York, I can get a job, a regular job, retail or something, and I could make, $15 an hour. And that's, in comparison, I was 15 years old. I was the manager of Pizza Hut, and I made $5.50 an hour on the books, and that was real life. And one of my famous sayings on this podcast is that if you would have told me when I was making $5.50 an hour that, Jay, there would be a time in your life where you were making $13 an hour and you'd still be poor, I would tell you that you are completely and utterly insane. But $13 an hour? I'm getting my own place. No, you're not, bro. You ain't getting that. You ain't getting shit. So, Democrats want minimum wage across the board, federally, to be $15. So that, let's just say I work at ShopRite in Queens. Let's just say my mother goes ill in New Jersey. How about, or Connecticut, or wherever she lives. Maybe I can transfer to another store, or I can easily move. Because here's the thing, you want to know why? You want to know the truth why freaking Republicans don't want a $15 federal minimum wage? I'll tell you why. Because then Democrats are going to start spreading out around the country and ruin their electorate. And that's the truth. Because if I can make $15 an hour in, Colorado or something, especially some state with legal pot, why would I stay here? The only reason I'm staying here is because I'm trying to fix my damn country. Let's move on to the next point of legal pot. There aren't any Democrats that are against the legalization of marijuana at a recreational level. Tax and regulate. Tax and regulate and pump that money back to the economy. Maybe help out $1 trillion deficit. Maybe. But also, the important thing about voting, man, because Canada is on the table now. I get it that a lot of people say, oh, I'm moving to Canada if Trump wins. Okay. Wasn't enough of an incentive. Canada has legalized marijuana. They have not legalized it medically. They haven't legalized it on 5 street corners. The entire country of Canada has legal recreational marijuana for adults to purchase. Right now. They've got that. Canada's on the table. We have this election, and God forbid we have 2020. God forbid Trump wins. But you know what? Listen, I'm going to do everything in my power from now until election night, until we get a Democrat in the White House. But I'm not going to sit here in a rising fascist regime and watch this country come apart. So if we don't, if America doesn't get out there and vote and make sure we put people with brains in charge, people who actually have a clue, then you know what? I know Canada's cold, but they got legal pot. So, it's an option. And you know what else they have? Healthcare. For everybody. Like every other major country has. Besides us. Public school. Listen, if you want to send your kid to private school and or a charter school, or private education, that's your right as an American to do. They have those. Those exist. But if you think that less fortunate kids whose parents don't, have the means to send them to a private school, if you think we should take some money and improve our public school system, then you want to vote for Democrats. Because that's the message of the Democrats. We want education, healthcare. Education is a big pillar of the Democratic agenda. Public education especially. Free college, tuition-free college. Now, I'm not talking about Yale and Hofstra, folks. We're talking about your local community college should not be charging you money. You should have to pay money if you want to leave state and go get the college experience. That's when you pay money. You pay money for books. I shouldn't be paying money at the College of Staten Island, the CUNY local community college. That shouldn't be a thing. The reason why you have to pay that is because somewhere community college became not free anymore. I don't know who came up with these tricks, but that needs to stop. The basic 2-year college degree that whatever you get after 2 years or 4 years, that basic thing needs to be tuition free. Because we have people 18 years old taking out, starting on the path of $100,000 in student loan debts that they're never going to get away from. And then they're owned by big banks. That's where Elizabeth Warren comes in. No, not her DNA test. Which, oh man. Why? Why, Liz? Why? But somebody that's been, if you, when you owe $100,000 in student loans, and you can't get those, and you can't pay those student loans, the banks basically own you. And they can take what they want. And the banks can just, and I don't know if you know one thing about banks, they have money. Like, they're not going broke. They're not a collection agency. It's not like, oh, if we don't get this student to pay his student loan, we're broke. No. The banks are always going to be fine. They're always going to get bailed out by Republican fascist regimes. But if Democrats are in power, I'm pretty sure Elizabeth Warren in the Senate, or whatever cabinet position she would be given in 2020, and I'm sorry, spoiler alert, the cabinet position Elizabeth Warren has in 2020 is not going to be president. She blew that when she decided to take a DNA test. And she blew that by being old and white. I'm sorry. That's what this is. We cannot throw an old white person out there. I'm sorry, not to head the ticket. So Elizabeth Warren is really tough on banks and is really tough on Wall Street. And if we can take back some control of our government, she would be more apt to be, her bills might get more traction than they do now. Taking on Wall Street. Not like Trump that hires Goldman Sachs people to work in his cabinet. Hi, Gary Cohen. And I mean, to bring it home here, I know I haven't hit every issue that the Democrats are on, but these are issues that shouldn't go over anyone's head. It's not complicated. Democrats want you to have health care. Democrats want you to have a livable living wage. And Democrats want your children to be able to go to school and get the education they deserve and get a high education, even if you don't have the money to send your kids to a private or a parochial school or a charter school. Even if you don't have those options, Democrats want every public school to be delivering a high degree of education to the youth, because it's all about the children. And women's rights. I mean, a women's right to, go to whatever doctor she wants and talk about the things that, and talk about, things that us men don't understand. Things that go inside, things that go on in there. Listen, I don't have female organs. So I don't think that anybody who doesn't have female organs should be telling females what to do with their organs. This is what the Democrats are about. And again, giving women the freedom to make the choice with their body is not inviting America to an abortion party. So people need to understand that. So you have Democrats want you to be able to get educated. They want you to have health care. They want you to be able to be making enough money to put food on your table. And, oh yeah, they're not down with throwing kids in cages and murdering journalists, allowing Saudi Arabia to murder journalists, members of the free press. That just doesn't happen. Jamal Khashoggi had a family. I'm pretty sure he had a family. So, November 6th, it comes down to, do you want healthcare, a living minimum, a living wage? Do you want education? And do you want your children to grow up and say, when I was a kid, that's when they started putting kids in cages? J Porks. Dyze in your house.
If you don't know what Staten Island is, it's like New York's abortion that lived.
Representing Staten Island.
These Staten Island boys are no joke.
Huh. J Porks here. And I know I've been a little busy on this East Coast radio stuff. Talking about resist, remove, and recreational. But I gotta tell you about one more thing. You should be a East Coast Radiohead. That's right. And you can become a East Coast Radiohead just by going to patreon.com/JPorks and check out the offers we have there. There's a low tier, a middle tier, and a high tier. All of those get you bonus content, exclusive personalized artwork, and even a chance to interact with me on a personal level over the phone. We could talk about what's going on in this podcast. We could talk about how we are going to flip these seats blue in November. And we are going to vote like this is our final election, because it might be. Patreon.com/JPorks. Become a East Coast Radiohead and join the resistance.